You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk, or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq, Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now, 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, our family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
Sometimes we need to slow down and remember the simple pleasures in life. Good coffee, good books, and good company. Come on in. Take a seat. The coffee's just been brewed. Let's see who we have in the coffee shop today.
What a wonderful day in the coffee shop. And I'm looking for the book. The book on the table. There's a book. What a cool title, Dying for Vengeance. And the author's name on the book is J.M. West. How you doing today, Jody?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to Jesse's Coffee Shop.
Oh, I love having authors in the coffee shop. Now, you've got to tell me about this book.
Well, Dying for Vengeance is my very first book in the Carlisle Crime Case series. And it's about two detectives. Carlisle homicide detective Erin McCoy is the first woman appointed to the Carlisle Police Department squad, and her mentor is the senior detective, Christopher Snow. On the very first case, they get involved in an inheritance dispute and track a serial killer who's stalking family members. They find out that the perp, or the killer, is dispatching his victims with toxic chemicals. And as the detectives chase the clues and connect to the related victims, they find a mutual attraction while she nurses him back from a shooting accident. But sparks fly when a FBI special agent comes to offer McCoy a job if she'll train at Quantico. And McCoy does. But then she returns to Carlisle, and learns she has a rival for Snow's affections. And during the interim, Snow's partner, Reese Savage, returns from a Middle East deployment, expecting to return to work, and his old partner, who is Christopher Snow. He has PTSD and some other issues that they have to work on, and in the interim, the chief March reassigned McCoy to the K-9 unit.
Wow, sounds like there's quite a lot going on.
There is. There's all of the books in the series, all four of them, are based on an actual crime. So in the backstory that there is a crime, but all the characters are my own creation, and I've changed the circumstances to suit my narrative.
I love it when authors base their plots on something that really happened.
Well, it's easier that way because that's our starting point. And once we have that starting point, then the characters sort of coalesce around that conflict, and then the author, in this case me, I just move on from there.
I have to admit my favorite author does the same thing, and that this is the only one I ever mention on air,
mm-hmm.
and that would be Brad Thor.
Oh.
He is my favorite traditionally published author. I have many other favorites, but he's the only one I mention. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. And he's actually not one that I'm familiar with, but I will look him up.
He's a #1 New York Times bestselling thriller author.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite books of his, he took the real history of the Federal Reserve and turned it into a white-knuckle thrill ride.
Oh, my goodness. I'll have to look him up then when I'm at the bookery. I volunteer once a week, Thursday mornings, at the bookery in Carlisle. It's a gently used bookstore. where we sell, fiction is our most favorite genre, but there we have 10,000 titles and sell other books as well. And they carry mine, too.
Well, that's great. The title of that book would happen to be Hidden Order.
Hidden Order. Okay, thanks. I can make a note of that.
Like I said, I love it when authors take something real and weave it right into their writing so that you don't know where the facts end and the fiction begins.
That's right, and that's one of the main things that I aim for is realism. I was at a time between teaching positions when I was a freelance journalist, and I would naturally just gravitate to the crimes, through the police blogs and reports and the articles. And when I turned to the crime stories, I sought a police consultant. And so I had a consultant on for all of the series, and he was kind enough to read them all. And he said, well, I know how you did it as a civilian, but you nailed how we do business, piece by piece by piece by piece. And so that's what I do. I follow the clues, I follow the evidence, and I take it where it leads me. I don't follow a formula.
Well, that is fantastic, because I've read some great traditionally published books, and I've read some not-so-great ones, and I've read some great self-pub books, and I've read some not-so-great ones, and you can sometimes tell, in either case, when someone's following that formula.
Yes. If you've read a number of mysteries, and I have ever since I retired, I think I've read several hundred, I can recognize it in some of even the most popular authors.
Exactly.
It just suits my writing style better if I don't follow the formula. It's better for me to be in the reader's position and not know who the killer is, and just follow the clues and discover the killer as when the reader does, or maybe a few minutes before.
So do you plot out your books in advance, or at least the key points, this has to happen, that has to happen, and something else has to happen, or do you just totally let your characters take over?
I let my characters tell their story. I tried. I had some advice to at least write out chapter outlines, and so I did that. I did that with Dying for Vengeance. I'll do the first 10, and I wrote a sentence outline for the first 10 chapters. Then I started typing merrily away, and then when I reached, chapter 13, I went back to my outline to see if I had adhered to it, and of course I had not. The characters did what they wanted to do, and so that's my style. I don't have any formula. I don't have an outline, and I don't block it out ahead of time. To me, it just feels more realistic if I don't.
I have a feeling you'd like Brad Thor. He knows that, his character has to get from this city to that city, or this point in the city to that point in the city, but he doesn't know how he's going to get there until he writes it.
Right.
So I'd have to say, you're in excellent company.
Oh, thank you. That's the way I enjoy writing, and I know other people have their habits, and I'm sure that they follow them according to how they feel comfortable writing. But that's how I feel comfortable writing.
Well, I think there's as many different ways to write as there are authors and stories out there.
Well, I think so too, and the ones that we all have a story to tell, and so we want that story to be told, and we're lucky enough if we can get a publisher to share that thought with us and publish it. And I was. Sunbury Press answered my query, and I signed a contract for 3 books, and he asked me what they would be about. And I had already started the second one, Courting Doubt and Darkness, but I really hadn't thought about the third one. And then I remembered that we live in a historical town, and Molly Pitcher is buried in the old graveyard. And so I said, well, I think I'd like to do one around Molly Pitcher. And then that's Darkness at First Light. It centers around Revolutionary War reenactors, and she plays a part in the book.
Wow! Now I have to ask, how did you weave Molly Pitcher And how much research did you have to do about her to include her in your manuscript?
It takes me about 4 months to do research. I do research on every book. With Dying for Vengeance, I had to do research on the inheritance and went through the litigation that went through the courts. And for Darkness at First Light for Molly Pitcher, I went to the gravesite, and I say I did about 4 months' worth of research on her, too. But I also had to research the Revolutionary War, and I read a book about Washington, and I had to read enough until I got comfortable, until I could actually visualize her and see what she did and make her real. And my character, Erin McCoy, volunteers to play the part of Molly Pitcher during a rehearsal when they're with the group, the Revolutionary War reenactors. And that's how it ties in. That's how she did it in this particular case.
Well, that is fantastic. And when you were researching Dying for Vengeance, did you speak to a number of police officers to try and figure out how it went behind the scenes, or were you already able to figure that out from your time as a freelance journalist?
Well, both, actually. I did have a police consultant on the Carlisle Police Department, and he answered thousands of questions from, what kind of weapons do they use? They use a 9mm Glock, and he showed me how to take it down and how to put it back together. He was also a helicopter pilot, and he says, call me anytime and I will answer your questions. And I said, no matter how silly. He said, no such thing as a silly question. So, and he has done a fantastic job, and he has read all the texts and has given me advice on how to improve. And the one point of advice that he has, he said, lose some of the CSI lingo. We don't talk that way. So I went back and took some of the terms like perp out, because they don't use that. They use the term killer or murderer.
Well, that's great, and I think it's fantastic that you kind of were able to peel back the layers of the onion, so to speak, to get a peek inside the real world of the law enforcement. Mm-hmm.
And that's my, since I write a police procedural, that's my first goal. My first goal is a sense of realism, that these people actually are people, that they're not heroes, they're ordinary people who are faced sometimes with an extraordinary situation. And it's very difficult to be a policeman, because they face life and death, and in one book I said that they court down in darkness all the time, both on the road and in themselves. And so what I try to do is balance that off, so that in the books that I reveal they're trying to solve the crime, but I also try to share with the readers their personal lives.
And it sounds like you didn't back away from any topic, not even that of PTSD with the vet returning to the police force.
No, I don't. I'm pretty blunt with, and actually I had an experience with that. And as a matter of fact, Erin's father is also a vet, and he helps her. She helped when she was little. She helped him get through it, and now that she's grown, he helps her get through some of her conflicts, and so she's pretty close to her dad.
That's great. Now, did you base Erin on a real-life person you know, or was it 100% made up?
She's 100% made up. Physically, she resembles my niece with the red hair and the green eyes. My niece has brown eyes, but Erin has green. And I named her that for a reason, because Erin is green, refers to Ireland, and McCoy, of course, the real deal. And so she's the real deal. She tries. She has the jitters, being the first woman on the police squad. On the homicide squad. But she plows forward, and she does her best, and she makes mistakes, and she, walks all over. Sometimes she puts her foot in her mouth and tries to go on.
So you really kind of, for lack of a term, humanize the badge.
Right. Yes. I try to have people that other people can relate to. And it's funny because on one of the reviews on Amazon, I chuckled because one of the readers wrote down, I live down the street from the Snows, so I was tickled because she was treating them as real people. So that was my aim.
That's great. Now, how do you go about getting to know your characters? Is it just through your writing of the story, or do you write little side stories that never show up in the manuscript, but that you write to kind of figure out little things about this character?
No, not really. I just try to make them give them the characteristics of people that I have met in life that I respect. For example, and in some ways, Ethan McCoy, the main character's father, is based on my own father in some ways, and in some ways he is not. So, in the instance of Erin McCoy, she's the main character, protagonist. She shares some of my traits, my love of mocha. She shares, and she also. We also like the same kind of ice cream, just little details like that. But like Christopher Snow and Savage, Reese Savage, who's the veteran with PTSD, they have their own characteristics, and I try to make them consistent. How would they act in a certain situation? And that's how you differentiate, people. And Savage is sort of like his name suggests. He loses his temper. He says what he thinks. He is a little on the wild side. He's divorced. He is a little bit of a curmudgeon, and he gives Erin a hard time whenever it's necessary, to keep her on the straight and narrow. And he's a little bit resentful of the fact that she made the squad, and he was gone, during the interim, so he missed that. So. But I try to keep the characters consistent among themselves.
That's great. So what is Erin's favorite flavor of ice cream?
Chocolate, and she also likes Moose Tracks.
Okay, what's Moose Tracks?
Moose Tracks is vanilla ice cream, and it has nuts in it, and of course it's named after, what a moose does in the snow, so bits of vanilla, chocolate, and the nuts.
Sounds like a delicious treat.
Yeah, it is. Ice cream is always good.
Oh, it is. Now, Dying for Vengeance, how did you actually try and dig into the case and try and find it, or did you just go off the news articles? How did you research the case you based it on?
Research. I saw it first in the newspaper articles, and that's how many of the ideas that I develop come from newspaper articles, and then I'll go to the courthouse, and if I need to, and track it down, or talk to the police, or talk to the principals in the case. And in those cases, I don't use their names or anything, because of course, they don't want to be aired in public. They want to keep their privacy private, and so I try to honor that.
That's fantastic, though. That now your police contacts you largely got through being a journalist.
Actually, no. He happened to. Actually, he stopped me. Didn't give me a ticket, but he was very personable. And I told him that I was beginning to write a crime scene cases, and he told me he was with the Carlisle Police Department, and I told him I was basing it on the Carlisle Police Department, and would he mind being a consultant? And he surprised me by saying yes. Gave me his card, and then he said, "Call me anytime." I'm not sure if he expected me to, but I did, and he was very helpful. But he chooses to remain anonymous. He's now retired.
Well, we'll just call him the wonderful retired Carlisle officer.
Yes.
So, when you were writing these scenes and didn't know exactly how they interacted, or were you just making it up as you went along and hoping you had it right?
Well, I try to do the research, but then I tell the story. I tell the story, and if I have to, I keep going with the story, and then I can go back if I have a question. I can go back, like, what kind of a rifle would a Revolutionary War soldier, use, or musket? Then I go back and do the research, and then go back and plug it in the book in the right place.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
So you don't wait for that perfect fact. You write the story and then fill in the actual facts and details later.
Right. Yeah, I'll leave a gap. I might use parentheses to tell myself that something needs to go in here, especially if it's a date, and I'll go look it up later. But I don't let little things stop me, because while I'm thinking and I'm in the zone and I'm writing, and I want to stay in that writer's zone as long as I can, because it doesn't always come to me, And so if I'm in the zone, I just like to keep on writing.
All right, so tell me more about the writer's zone, because that's not, I understand what you're talking about, but I'd like you to explain it for the listeners.
All right. Usually when writers try to write, spend every day, and that's one of the things that Nora Roberts said, butt in the chair 8 hours a day. Well, I can't do that because I have a husband and a dog, two children, 2 grandchildren. So whenever I write, whenever I can. Sometimes, like if on the weekends, it might be 5 hours straight. Sometimes through the week, it might only be 2 hours. But then you sit down at the computer, and sometimes the words don't want to come. Sometimes the characters don't want to talk, and you just type anyway. And sometimes you will have to erase that. But at other times, when the juices just are flowing, the story just comes. It just comes to the fore of the mind, and the idea is just get it down as fast as you can, at least in my case. That's the way. It took about a year to write Dying for Vengeance. Oh, actually about 6 months, 4 months of research and 2 or 3 months editing. But with Courting Doubt and Darkness, I wrote that in 3 months. That's the second in the series. And it just wrote itself, I swear. And the characters had their conflicts, and the next scene came up, and then the next scene, and the next scene. And before I knew it, it was done. That's my favorite book in the series, the second one.
Well, that's awesome. Now, they say editing is slaying your darlings.
Yeah. Editing's tough. When you send it off to the editor, the editor I had for Dying for Vengeance actually didn't make that many changes. Other than I had to drop part of a subplot. But with each book, I've had a different editor, and they each wanted something else. So wanted me to do something a little different, or it might be something minor, like changing the dialogue or spelling the words not phonetically but regularly, or it might be something as complex as removing somebody from the subplot, which I had to do in Darkness at First Light. I had to remove a character from the subplot, a situation, and which I wasn't happy about, but I did because I have an editor who says it'll make it better. And I have to thank her, because even though it made more work for me, I think it did make the book stronger. So editors are necessary.
Oh, I completely agree with you, but tell me about that little situation you had to remove. I always like to know what you were in love with but had to take out.
Well, it was in Darkness at First Light, there was an Amber Alert that became a kidnapping, and then a murder. And then two of the characters were having an affair, but they weren't married to each other. And the one was a stepfather to the girl who was kidnapped. And I had made a suggestion that it was that possibly he was a suspect, that he was involved, and that was just too much of a taboo for my editor. She says, no, we don't want that. We don't want him as a possible suspect. So I took that part out.
Okay. I can see that.
Mhm.
Now, what were you going to say?
I could too. When when you're sitting and you're writing, you don't think about somebody else's perspective because you're in the moment. But once she explained it to me, she emailed me her reasoning. I understood, and I thought, well, that makes sense, and so I took it out.
With all your books, is there been a topic such as the PTSD or the kidnapping of a child that just made you cringe while you were writing it, but you knew you had to delve into it and get it out there?
Well, it didn't really make me cringe so much as the fact that crime is it's universal. And I've gone to many, I don't know how many book signings and had events and to speak, and people time and time again ask me, how can you deal with crime? You seem like a nice person. Why are you writing these books? And I said, well, crime is a fact of life, and I want to get in there and examine it and see what makes people tick and see how we can, make this world, or at least, if not a better place, at least honor those people who do.
Well, that's great. So do you have a lot of readers that are police officers?
I don't. If so, not many of them tell me. Some will say. I've had a number of say that I'm a security guard, or I'm a retired officer, or I'm with the EMT, and they will tell me that they related to like the EMT. The main EMT in my books is Troy Hemmer. And they will say, I can relate to that, and we can relate to that. And I actually really enjoy book signings when people come up to me and say, the best thing about these books is they're realistic, that it seems like that they could really happen, that I don't have any, outrageous crime, like car chases or anything like that. I try to keep it real.
That's awesome. That really is awesome. And I actually must admit, I have briefly, many years ago, been to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, although I did not know that Molly Pitcher was buried there, so I may have to make a return trip.
Yes, she's in the old courtyard, and anybody will tell you where she is, and she has a nice statue there, and there's a marker at her feet that explains the situation, and her actual name is Mary Macaulay. Mary Hayes Macaulay, and Molly Pitcher was just a nickname given to her because she would carry water to the men. So there were a number of Molly Pitchers. I learned, too, when I do research. I learn a lot when I do my research, and so I like that aspect of writing, too.
Well, I will add one more piece of lore to your Molly Pitcher story.
All right.
And I know this one from being a military spouse.
Mm-hmm.
The Air Defense Artillery units have each unit issues a Molly Pitcher Award to a spouse who has supported that unit.
Oh, that's great.
Like I said,
that's neat.
I can actually add one more little piece of information to your background.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an actual award. It's usually presented at the military ball for that unit to a spouse who has worked with the FRG or done something else absolutely wonderful for the unit. And the FRG, for listeners who don't know, is short for Family Readiness Group, and it is the spouse support unit for that Army unit.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there is actually a Molly Pitcher Award out there.
Well, that's good. I think there should be, because the spouses go through the military experience as well.
From personal perspective, I can vouch for that.
Yes.
So
I was just going to say I have a lot. The Carlisle barracks is here, and the military college, and so I do have a lot of readers who are military people, and they're actually my best customers. So
that's great, because I know personally I love a book that keeps me excited, but doesn't necessarily remind me of exactly what's going on around me.
Mm-hmm. I can relate to that, too. We all, as a reader, I like to be educated as well as entertained, and so I like to learn something new And so when I read a book that I really enjoy, I come away with that experience.
That's one of my favorite things. In fact, the term that's used to describe Brad Thor's books is often called faction. You don't know where the facts... Faction. Mm-hmm. Yes, F-A-C-T-I-O-N. You don't know where the facts end and the fiction begins. One of his favorite things, like you, he likes to get the details right. Mm-hmm. And I know in one of his books, he used the Turkish Prime Minister's license plate and actually got what it said on that license plate correct. And that's one of those tiny little facts you can read right past and never know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to get the facts. It's essential to get the facts right, because your readers will call you on it if you don't. And so, like in Dying for Vengeance, I have Aaron McCoy and Christopher Snow. One of the things they do is they visit the University of Texas, Austin, and they're looking up one of the persons of interest when she matriculated there. And so the dean, I looked it up. The dean's name was Randy Deal, and so I put that in there because he was the actual dean at the time when the student was supposed to have, been a student there.
Well, that's fantastic. It really is, because I love, like I said, I have a passion for facts myself. Now, mostly I bring that out on my other show, but I love to see it in the books I read as well.
I do too.
What was the one fact you were chasing that took you the longest to research?
Oh, that was in Courting Doubt and Darkness, and I was doing research on the Marcellus Shale oil and gas company, and I had to find out how the workings of it and what a rig looked like and how they do the horizontal drilling and what kind of chemicals that they use to frack or break apart the shale so that the gas and oil will come to the surface. So that was the most technical, and about halfway through I'm thinking, why did I get involved in such a complex process? But I'm glad I did, because I think I was able to offer a realistic examination, and I tried to present both sides of the positive and the negative too, in the book. So one of the characters was worked for the Susquehanna River Basin, and so it was her job to test the water, the effluents that came off into the Susquehanna River from the rigs and the shale oil and gas rigs and the other companies too along the Susquehanna. So that was the one that took the longest.
That's fantastic, and I can't tell you, as someone who had lived in Pennsylvania for many years, and I'm not going to say where, but it wasn't Carlisle, It's great to find someone else who actually knows how to pronounce Susquehanna.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've lived here. I'm originally from Ohio, but I've lived here for 40 years. My youngest was born here in Hanover. And after you've been 40 years in the community, you do learn to pronounce the area geographical places. And I love the Susquehanna. It's a beautiful river. And it's 444 miles long. And I had to do research on that too for the book. And it's beautiful.
Now,
I love water.
You can't put all those facts into your book, so I'm sure there's lots of research that you have that never made it in because it was too detailed, too dry, or just didn't fit the storyline. Does that ever bother you?
No, not really, because you have to learn when to, because writers call it, if you put in too much information, writers call it a data dump. Because they don't want all of that at once. So you just have to learn. It's sort of like editing, maybe like what you do. When you're finished with the show, you edit out some things. Then that's what I have to do as a writer. I have to edit out what doesn't fit. And that's the way it is.
Well, that's great. All right. Well, we are going to take a break here. and pay those radio station bills, so I'm going to pour you a fresh cup of coffee.
Thank you.
Something for you to enjoy while we take that wonderful commercial break, and we will see you on the other side.
All right.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
Thank y'all for hanging in there with us while we paid those radio station bills. I am going to refresh my coffee. And Jody is still with us. So Jody, you have 4 books out in this series. How did you come up with the covers?
Well, actually, my publisher did that. He wanted to focus on one of the main elements in the book, and so on Dying for Vengeance, on the front is a hypo, and that's the murder weapon. And I'm not ruining any part of the story because that's the murder happens like within the first few pages, and so it's pretty. The policeman figure that out pretty quickly.
Okay.
And of Reporting Doubt and Darkness, again, the arrows are the murder weapon. And with Darkness at First Light, the publisher decided, well, since it's a historical, more of all of them, it's as much a historical fiction as it is a police procedural. And so he wanted to focus on Molly Pitcher. And then I have the photograph inside the cover that I took myself at the site. And then for my final one, the fourth one I had out, Had a Dying Fall, I said that I just told him a fire introduces the book. It's the very first thing that the firefighters are there fighting the fire. And so he put the flames on the book cover. And I had wanted to have the words fall, like be burning into the flames, but he didn't buy that. So my publisher actually designed my book covers, even though he has a marketing department.
That's great,
He liked my book. He said for Dying for Vengeance, he said I had him on the first sentence.
Well, that's always
a fantastic really unusual
thing. That's always a fantastic thing. So what made you decide to go with a small publisher?
Well, he was the first one who answered my query. I had actually written another book, A Rite of Passage, Glory in the Flower, the Rite of Passage story, about the four roommates in the turbulent 60s. And I was still teaching at the time, and of course I was grading papers, since I taught composition and literature. Graded in the neighborhood of like 500 a semester. So it took me a little longer, and they advise you to find an agent and write query letters. And so I started sending query letters out, and what I found was, in process of not finding an agent, I found that they would return the query letter with just like a one-sentence comment that I knew that they hadn't read. So I started looking through Writer's Guide and sending out query letters to publishers who would publish a first manuscript. And so Sunbury Press was the first publishing house that responded to the manuscript, the Dying for Vengeance manuscript that I had out. And I sent out multiple queries to multiple publishing houses, and they were the first ones. And so I accepted and signed the 3-book contract, and we're still, partnering together with Sunbury Press. It's a small press, but they're very enthusiastic, and they're very interested in advancing local authors, especially PA. And so that's why I went with Sunbury Press.
Well, that's a fantastic reason. I mean, I think it's outstanding to have that support. I really do.
Yeah, I do too, because he has like many ideas about. He said, "Well, we'll publish the book." I think they have. I know about 200 authors, and I don't know how many they publish a year, but he will meet with us, and he has a lot of ideas like online interviewing and starting a radio. Starting the radio program, and he will work with us individually. And if we're not doing as well, or if he has better, some ideas of how we could go to our audience, that's what he says. Go to your audience, wherever your audience is. Then he will share that with us, and so. I'm really happy with being with a smaller press, because I know some writers who are with bigger presses, and while their advances might be more, they don't get the personal attention that I do.
Well, that's great, and it's great that you found what works for you.
Yeah, it is great. The only thing that I wish is that I had more exposure, and so what I'm hoping to do is, because I can only do so much, one-on-one. Book signings and events and discussions, which I enjoy doing. I was just invited to a book club of someone, a military actually, a military spouse whose group has chosen my books, and they're reading a number of them, and I am going to go as a guest speaker and to just answer the question.
That's great. And so you do a lot of events in your area.
I do. I've been to York and Hanover and Philadelphia and New Cumberland. Wherever I'm called, I'll go, and in Carlisle too. A number of them in Carlisle, especially Carlisle Barracks. They have Oktoberfest and Chris Kendall's Market, which I go to every year, and I usually sell around 23, 24 at each of those events. So I'm really happy about that.
That's fantastic. I mean, every author has their place, and every author has a voice, and I think it's important to try and introduce, in my case, listeners to as many different authors as I can.
And I think that's really good, because there are, most of us don't get exposed to the authors that are out there, except the ones, on the bestseller list, and those are the creme de la creme. But there are a lot of good local authors. There are a lot of good in our area, and I imagine that's so too. The Southern have the authors, and the Northeast have their own little group of writers that we could do with some exposure. Believe me.
Well, my love of books, although I'm not a writer, my love of books is one of the reasons I started the show, because I go through books at an alarming rate. And for me, it's one of those ways of not only finding new books to read, it's a way of kind of peeling back that onion and peeking inside, going, what makes this author tick?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've enjoyed being on Jesse's Coffee Shop, and so I have enjoyed talking to you, and I think it's a good thing. I just wish more people had your enthusiasm for writers and authors and books, and I know I too am a lifelong reader. I've been reading all my life and have favorites, and a number of people do. I just wish it were true in the other generations as well.
Well, that's one of the reasons I like to do my show, because a lot of people who aren't avid readers will pick up a podcast and listen to it while they're cooking dinner. And if they hear about a book on a podcast, they may actually pick up their book, even if it's the Kindle version or some other version, and find a new author. In fact,
it isn't that exciting. To me, that's exciting to find a new author, an author that I really enjoy reading. I get settled down here, and it's a special treat. And I have an hour or so to really relax, and that's how I relax. But I enjoy writing, too. I enjoy that as much as reading. So, because I like to tell stories.
Well, I think stories are fantastic, and in fact, they're a lot of what makes the world go round, if you think about it.
Yes, they are. And I don't know why I gravitate to crime, but I think it's something here again that I mentioned before that, every community has. People will come up to me when I do book signings and say, I thought Carlisle was a quaint little town. I thought it was a nice little town. I said, well, it is a quaint, nice little town, of historical importance, but we have crime. Like every other community, we do have crime.
Well, I have to admit, sometimes I feel like I live in Mayberry. Hold Andy Griffith, but because I'm blessed to be able to live on a U.S. military base, I see kids playing outside.
That's good.
I can leave my door unlocked, be at the other end of the house, and know that everything will be fine, or leave my garage door up while I'm doing stuff around the house and know it's fine. And that's not something you can do everywhere anymore.
No, it isn't. No, we keep our doors locked just because it's, the same thing to do.
I generally keep my doors locked as well, but I also know that if I get sidetracked while I'm bringing in the groceries by a phone call and end up at the other end of the house or something, nothing's going to go wrong. But like I said,
that's good.
I feel like I live in Mayberry. I feel like I've stepped back in time in some ways by being blessed to live where I do. Because how many communities anymore do you see kids playing outside?
Well, not very many, actually. They prefer, I think, to stay inside and play video games. At least my grandsons do. But I think the neighbor kids are outside playing basketball right now, so it's good that some do. I think we can still do that in Carlisle. it's still small enough that we can do some of those small town things.
And those are the things to be treasured in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think so too. I mean, our American way of life, it's something that we should not take for granted. That it's a gift, really. And we shouldn't forget that freedom's not free, really. Seriously.
Oh, I think I know that more than most.
Mm-hmm.
I know the price of freedom. And I know the sounds of freedom, too, is sometimes they, not today, but some days they will interrupt my shows. Because, like I said, I do have another show, and I do that one live. And sometimes there'll be those noises that there's nothing I can do to get away from them. They're just going to interrupt.
Well, that's part of life.
And I'll just make a comment about you just heard the sounds of freedom, and I'll just keep going on with my show.
Mm-hmm.
But, like I said, so I do have to ask, and I ask all my guests, what is your favorite coffee shop treat? Everybody's got one.
Well, my favorite is a mocha latte with a brownie. Chocolate. I'm a chocoholic.
Oh, is there any such thing as too much chocolate?
No, I have it every day. It's dark chocolate. It's fine.
Oh, I have to admit, I have a wonderful little treat of my own tucked away. It is extra dark chocolate covered espresso beans. Kind of the best of both worlds.
Ooh, sounds good.
Oh, yes. I keep them tucked away, and my husband knows he better keep his grimy paws off.
Well, my husband and I share the same. We like dark chocolate covered almonds.
Oh, yum.
Yeah.
So, what is the one thing you wish you could tell your readers that you've either had to exclude from a book, or some little thing about your characters that you haven't been able to include in a book that you wish you could tell your readers?
Well, I like to tell my readers that my characters are like they are. They have the same problems. They have the same worries. They have face the same or similar challenges, and they have conflicts in their personal lives, as well as conflicts, in their professional lives. And it's, part of life, and that's the realism that I try to portray.
I think it's fantastic. I really do. Now, you mentioned you were a professor for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
How does that impact your writing style?
Well, I had been a writing coach for 40 years, actually. And so that was sort of the other side of it, coaching students and giving them ideas and telling them how to make their writing style transparent and clear and simple enough for people to understand. And so it seemed like, the flip of the coin. But so when I retired and had extra time, this is something I wanted to pursue because my husband plays golf, and I don't. I'm not particularly athletic, but I do have a love for words, and I'm a bibliophile, and I love to read, and I read maybe 3 to 5 books a week. And so I thought, why not try it, give it a shot. So I gave myself, 7 years. And I am now working on my 5th book in the series, and it's called Things Strangled, which comes from a Bible verse, and it deals with a murder, and that's how I came to writing as a professor. And so, after coaching writing for so many years, it just seemed like the flip side of that would be reading and writing.
Well, I think that's fantastic. So, do you ever find that you're too close to your own work?
Sometimes my characters will be living in my head, and I will be working some little detail out, and somebody will be talking to me, like my husband, and ask me, and I'll say, what? And he said, you're not paying attention to me. You're living too much with your people, your characters. And I have to admit, he's right. I do.
But aren't your characters in some ways your alter ego, doing things you never could do, but just... Perhaps. My characters do things that I would never think of doing. I'm not that brave. So
I'm really actually portraying a group of people, the police, that I admire because I know that they lay their lives on the line, and I also admire any group of people, the military, the EMTs, the doctors and nurses, anybody who helps. I admire those kinds of people, and those are the main characters in my book. And wouldn't do the things that they do. To me, they're very, very brave, and I admire that.
I think the fact that you humanize the badge and show that police officers are people too is an amazing thing. I really do. And I also think the fact that you don't shy away from some of the tougher topics, like a vet returning from overseas, having some PTSD and having to work through that while he's on the job as a police officer, is also equally amazing. Because so many times people will kind of will just put on for lack of a term, the rose-colored glasses, and you just wonder, wait a minute, is it really that easy?
No, it's not easy. As a matter of fact, the character, Reese Savage, who has PTSD in my books, it recurs. And like when he has a flashback, I'll spell it out and describe it in detail. And then when he goes to talk to his counselor, I go with him, and then it's still an issue. It's still an issue in all 4 books. It's not something that's easy, or it's complex, and it stays with you, and sometimes it takes years and years to overcome.
How did you research the PTSD and the years and years to overcome it?
Well, I read a number of books to do the research, but I also know a number of veterans, and several of them have different episodes, one more severely than the other.
Kind of like they have different triggers. One will be triggered by thunder, one will be triggered by darkness or smell.
Or cars, when a car, what's the term, when it backfires? And yeah, there are different triggers, and it just changes the personality altogether. You can see it in the face and the eyes and the aspect, the way he holds his body. It's kind of scary, and that's here again. It's my goal is to be realistic and show that the people who are characters in my book are human, and that they have human foibles, or errors, or problems, or mistakes, and they're just like the rest of us in that regard.
Like again, I think it's amazing that you were able to A, do that research, B, get so many people to talk to you about this. Because some of these topics are deeply personal.
That's true. That's true. They are, and that's why I do so much research. And that's why I also do interviews. I do a lot of, and that comes from my journalistic part of my background too. Doing interviews, one-on-one interviews with people, and they seem less threatened when I tell them that it's going to be fictionalized. They won't. They'll recognize the PTSD, but I'm not naming them.
You're not naming names.
No.
You might name the region of Iraq or Afghanistan that it came from, but you're not going to name them. Mm-hmm. Because, trust me.
I might mention, the exact helicopter that he flew, if someone flew while he was in Nam or whatever, like a Chinook, but I'm not going to, deal with any real people.
That's great. That is great, because unfortunately, I think many people with PTSD, whether they're veterans, cops, because it is something that can happen in the police profession as well.
It can happen to anybody. It can happen to rape victims. It can happen to people, children who have been abused.
Right. And now it is becoming a more commonly accepted thing, but there's always that, is this person safe to be around concept.
Right. Yeah, there's always that fear of in the mental health field. There's a stigma that's attached to that, and I think that's one of the reasons that people who have PTSD are now I'm getting tired. That's one of the reasons that they aren't willing to share, their personal histories.
Right, because they don't want to be stigmatized. They don't want to be viewed as someone who for lack of a term, couldn't hack it.
Exactly. And so you'd be surprised how many people who do return, who have PTSD, who do try to reenter, and how difficult that is for them to do that, to reenter, civilian life. It's different. It's different than they were before, and it's changed them. And so that happens to my characters too. It changes them for life.
I think I'm one of the few readers, since I am surrounded by military and have an extensive experience with them, who wouldn't be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad you shared that with the rest of the world, because it's so hard to explain.
It is. It's hard to explain anything traumatic, but if you've been through something similar, or if you know someone, you have a family member who has been through something similar, then or a close friend, then it becomes real. And if it's real, then I can be able to translate that into words.
Well, I think that is fantastic. Now, like I do with all my guests, I'd like to invite you to give out your social media contact information.
Okay. At this point, it is facebook.com/Carlisle Crime Cases by J.M. West.
Great. And are you on any other social media like Twitter or Instagram, anything like that?
Not at the moment, but according to your suggestion, I am going to be working on WordPress on a website. That's my next goal.
Cool. Can't wait to... Well, I love having repeat guests in the coffee shop, and maybe next time we'll have some updated social media contact information.
Well, I hope so.
All right.
Because it's a good way to get exposure.
Oh, I love having guests in the coffee shop. What can I say? Well, I have come to my favorite part in the episode, where I get to give you my social media contact information. You can always find out all about the books and the authors who write them at jessiescoffeeshop.com. You can also, if you want to be a guest in the coffee shop, you can drop me a line on the website. There's a contact form. Feel free. It comes straight to my inbox, which is jessie@klrnradio.com. And you can follow me on Twitter @RadioHostJessie. Now, I am going to pour myself a cup of coffee and snatch this copy of Dying for Vengeance off the table and settle down with a great book. And I will see you next time in the coffee shop.